bowel disease, which occurs is a chronic inflammatory bowel disease. So this inflammatory condition occurs in the GI. This occurs in the GI. It's a chronic condition. It means that if a patient is having IBD, you are not going to have a situation whereby you say that you have been able to clear these conditions. It's a chronic. And therefore, there could be remission and there could be relapse. These two conditions occur. There could be remission and there could be relapse. So, but to say that I've been able to clear this, the patient is free from this condition, it's not there. It's chronic inflammatory bowel disease. This is affecting the GI. And because it's chronic, the only thing that could happen is that there could be either relapse and there could be remission. There could be remission or remitting cause, or there could be relapse. These two words are used in IBD. Either there's a remitting cause or there's a remission or there's relapse. So for this, we have two types. For this inflammatory bowel disease, we have two types. And I'm just going to talk about the salient points in here. Talk about the salient points. If the pathophysiology is no need, I'm not going to talk about it. If just go straight to the salient point. It's inflammatory, and therefore it will be more of these cytokines, more of these mediators that would also cause these bowel conditions. So I'm just taking the salient aspect in this. So for IBD, we have two types for IBD. So we have ulcerative colitis and we have Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So these are the basic two types, two main types of IBD, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. In certain cases, these two conditions look similar. And at times it's difficult to differentiate. So we have similarities, and at times it's difficult to differentiate. So at a certain point, these two conditions look similar. At a certain point, similar to the point that it will be difficult to differentiate between this and this. At a certain point, you can also differentiate between this and this. So when you talk about ulcerative colitis, this is the basic. We have other differences, but the basic difference between ulcerative colitis and the Crohn's disease is that ulcerative colitis affects only the colon. It affects only the colon. But Crohn's disease can affect any part, and it's important, any part of the GI. Any part of the GIT can affect any part of the GIT. So these are the basic difference. Ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis affects the colon, and Crohn's disease can affect any part of the GI. Affect any part of the GI. So we talked about IBD, and I said that this IBD is a chronic condition. It's a chronic inflammatory bowel disease, and because it's chronic, it's not like we have been able to treat and the patient is okay from this condition. So, because it's chronic, either you treat, when you treat, there will be remission, remitting cause. Things could go down and there could be relapse. So either we have remitting cause or remission, or we have relapse. So these two can occur in these conditions. Basically, it's a bowel disease, so it occurs in Nigeria, bowel disease. And I said that we have basically two main types of IBD. We have ulcerative colitis and you have the Crohn's disease. And I said that for ulcerative colitis only affects the colon. For Crohn's disease, it affects any part of the GI. Any part of the GI. Okay, so because we are talking about GI, we are talking about the colon. I want us to know the colon, the parts of the colon. And I want you to be telling me the parts. So we have something like this. Okay, so this is a rough sketch of the colon. So which part is this? So I want you to name these parts for me. So A is what? B is what? C is what? D is what? E is what? F. So name these parts for me. A is what, class?
Ascending colon.
It's what?
Ascending colon.
Ascending colon. Ascending colon. B is what? I'm just talking, there's other areas. We could have this, we could have this. I'm touching on the main. B is what? What is B?
Transverse colon.
So the T colon. C is what?
descending colon.
So D, C. The D is what? D.
Sigmoid colon.
So sigmoid. E. E is called what?
Rectum.
E is rectum, and F is what?
Anus.
Is what? Is what?
Anus.
It is inert. Inert is what? So I don't know whether this is E. So A, I don't know whether you pronounce the A as inert. So who can tell me this area? And who can tell me this area? There's this area, there's this area. So the B is transferred colon. This is ascending, as you said. This side is what? This side is what? So what that you said, you are right. So this side is called what? So what is the name of this side? What is the name of this side? What is the name of this side? And where do you have the cecum? Okay, so these are the colon that we are talking about. So ulcerative colitis will affecting the colon. Ulcerative colitis will affect the colon. And the colon is this A to E is the colon. A to E is the colon. From this side, this side, this side, this side, this side, up to the E is the colon. Up to the E is the colon. Therefore, a question could be asked. I'll be asking these questions later. So note that when I'm talking about the colon, it's from the cecum. This is the appendix. It's from the cecum that runs through up to the rectum. It's the colon. Okay, so that is that. Let's move on. Okay, so I said we have two types of IBD. IBD, we have two types. We have ulcerative colitis and we have Crohn's disease. So let's see the differences in this. Say that they are the same in a certain way. You can also differentiate them. So let's differentiate them. So we have this. Let me draw a table and try to differentiate them. And I'll be asking you. So you have, say, ulcerative colitis here. We have Crohn's disease. So let's look at certain parameters. Let's look at, say, age. In terms of the age, how will you differentiate ulcerative colitis from the Crohn's disease you see from the CD? How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you talk about age and differentiate the two using the age? Ruth, your hand is up. Is there any issue? You have a question?
No, please.
How do you differentiate UC from CD based upon the age, based upon the gender? So gender, how do you do that? How do you do that from gender? Any idea? So in terms of age, you cannot differentiate the two and affect any age group. This one is also any age group. You cannot differentiate based upon the age. Gender. What can you say about the gender? Hello?
Sir,
Hello? Hello?
sir, please, I think the gender too can't be differentiated. It occurs like it's equal for both genders.
So the gender you cannot also. So M will be equal to F here. Is to M will be equal to F. So you cannot say that it affects more males than female. So you also use the gender to differentiate. So let's look at one risk factor. One risk factor. Who can tell me risk factor that could be used to differentiate ulcerative colitis from the Crohn?
Smoking.
So smoking. So what will you say about smoking? What will you say about smoking?
Okay. So smoking is protective for ulcerative colitis, but it's a potential factor for Crohn's disease.
Are you having this steroidal hormones being produced. You have masculine hormones.
Saying that for ulcerative colitis, it is protective. If someone smokes, they have a low risk of getting ulcerative colitis, but it is a risk factor for getting Crohn's disease.
So for ulcerative colitis, risk factor for ulcerative colitis is more common in non-smokers. So non-smokers or ex-smokers or non-smokers. And this for Crohn's disease is common. For smokers, Crohn's disease, those who smoke cigar get Crohn's disease. Ulcerative colitis, when you smoke, you'll not be getting ulcerative colitis. When you smoke, you'll be getting Crohn's disease. When you smoke, you'll be getting Crohn's disease. When you don't smoke, or you have smoked but you have stopped, you were smoking, you have stopped. Ex-smokers or those who are not smoking are prone to getting ulcerative colitis. So smoking affects Crohn's disease, or smoking will cause Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Non-smokers or ex-smokers, those who are not smoking or those who have stopped smoking are prone to getting ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis. Please, Profanto is coming here. So hold on for me for 5 minutes. Hold on. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Okay. So let's continue. So for risk factors, if you are talking about smoking, you can use smoking to differentiate. Those smokers, cigarette smokers are prone to getting Crohn's disease. But non-smokers or ex-smokers are also prone to getting ulcerative colitis. That is that. Let's talk about the anatomical distribution. Anatomical distribution. Distribution of the inflammation. That is an anatomical distribution. Distribution of the inflammation. So for CD, if I talk about anatomical distribution, for UC and CD, so the distribution, UC affects only the colon, the inflammation affects only the colon. The CD affects any part of the colon. So any part of the colon. So it means could affect, if I'm talking about, sorry, this can affect any part of the GI. I won't say any part of the colon, the GI. And when you talk about the GI starts from the mouth to the anus, the mouth to the anus. So CD can affect any part of the GI, but the UC would affect only the colon. I'll be asking you a question. CD affect any part of what? Any part of the GI. The GI start from the mouth to the anus. It means that you could have inflammation occurring within the mouth, within the esophagus, within the small intestine. So CD will affect any part of the GI. So that is the AD. AD, in terms of AD, where the inflammation occurs. The inflammation occurs within the colon only. CD, the inflammation can occur any part of the GI, could occur within the esophagus, within the small intestine. So the moment we ask a question about inflammation occurring in the small intestines, then quickly you should know that it's what? It's Crohn's disease. So that is this. We are talking about the presentation, how these UC and CD present itself, how it presents itself. Because UC affects mainly the colon, the diarrhea, they normally have diarrhea. Diarrhea could occur here, CD, UC, there could also be diarrhea. But because it's occurring only within the colon, under UC, there will be bloody diarrhea. Bloody diarrhea. We have other clinical presentation, but ones that could be used to differentiate. It could be bloody diarrhea. But for CD, because it can occur at any part, the presentation is variable. We use the word variable. It's variable. It's variable in the sense that depending upon, you could have a bloody diarrhea, depending upon where the inflammation is occurring. Depending upon, because it could happen in the mouth, could happen in the esophagus, could happen in the duodenum, could happen in jejunum. So because of this, we see that the clinical presentation is variable. So there could be pain, there could be diarrhea, there could be weight loss, depending upon where where we are having the inflammation. So note this. Ulcerative colitis, there will be bloody diarrhea, but this is variable. The presentation is variable in the sense that depend upon where we have the inflammation. So we could also have histology. Histology. Who can tell me histology? How do you use histology to differentiate between UC and CD? Who can see histology? You can use histology to differentiate between UC and CD. So histology is talking about areas which is being affected, the inflammation affect areas that inflammation affects, the disease conditions affect. For UC, the inflammation is limited to the mucosa. It's on the surface, mucosa. So any structures, if you have this to be, you have this to be the mucosa, this surface to the mucosa. Any structures on the surface will be affected. So it normally affects the mucosa and structures on the mucosa. That is for UC. So we have goblet cells. And you can also get cryptitis. Cryptitis is also found in the mucosa. Goblet cells are also found in the mucosa. These cells could be affected. It's just on the surface, mucosa surface. But the CD is submucosa. It eats into, so CD, you are eating into the second layer, submucosa. The first layer is the mucosa. The second layer is, and therefore these can eat into. And because of that CD, there could be other complications like fistula, because it's eating into the submucosa, eating deep. So it can also be called submucosa. So CD affects the submucosa, eating deep into the mucosa, and UC affect the surface. So it's limited to the surface, mucosa surface. That's mucosa surface. But CD eats deep and gets into the submucosa. So this is submucosa eating deep. And because it's eating deep, it could form fistula. So these are some of the differences that could be used. We can use to differentiate these two conditions. So we have the risk factors, that is the smoking. You can't use the age, you can't use the gender, but you can use the areas that are affected. You can use where it affects within the GI. So within the GI, UC affect on the colon, CD affect any part of the GI. So let me ask you this. So a patient comes. One of my questions, I don't know whether just missed the receipt or the last year. One of my questions, I was asking this, that if a patient comes with anal inflammation, anal inflammation, what type of IBD is this? And why? And why? What type of IBD is this and why?
So Crohn's disease, and because Crohn's affects from the gum to bum, so all the portions of the GI can be affected by Crohn's. But with ulcerative colitis, it's just the colon, which the anus is not included.
What did you eat this afternoon? Are you having more of the androgens in there? I can't hear you.
Yeah, because I was saying that for the question you asked, the likely inflammation will be Crohn's, because Crohn's affects the gum to the bum, so all of the GI lining can be affected by Crohn's disease. But with ulcerative colitis, it's just the colon that is affected. So for our patients, the likelihood of the inflammation would be Crohn's disease.
So that is that. So it's Crohn's disease. So be careful. At times, you may think that the anal part is part of the colon. The anal part is not part of the colon. It's part of the GI. It is not part of the colon. Very important. And therefore, if the patient is having the anal inflammation at the anal region, so inflammation of the anal region is a Crohn's disease. Inflammation within the rectum could be either UC or CD, depending upon the distribution of the inflammation. But the anal inflammation, the anal region, if there's inflammation in the anal region, it becomes what? It becomes Crohn. Okay, so let's now know the inflammation. If you have a colon, you have a colon like this, you have a colon, then the two conditions can affect the colon. But the UC is affecting only the colon. The CD is also affecting any part of the GI, which colon is also part. And therefore, how are you able to differentiate between if we have inflammation within the colon? How are you able to say that this is a UC or this is CD? If it's affecting the jejunum, if it's affecting the small intestine, straight away, we will say it's what? We will say it's Crohn's disease, straight away. But if it's affecting the colon, you cannot just say it's Crohn's disease or ulcerative, depending upon the distribution of the inflammation. So how do you differentiate based upon the distribution of the inflammation? How do you differentiate between the UC and CD?
Dr. Attakorah, please, for the inflammation under the UC, it occurs as a continuous inflammation of the colon. But then for the Crohn's disease, it occurs in a escaped lesion.
Okay, you said what?
Please, I said that the inflammation of the colon under the ulcerative colitis, it occurs in a continuous way, like a continuous inflammation of the colon. But for the Crohn's disease, it normally occurs in as a skip lesion.
Okay, so you are right. So UC. So let's tackle this, the UC. UC. How would the distribution be under UC? So you could have this. You could have under UC, you could have this colon. And as you said, the inflammation affecting the colon under UC is continuous inflammation. There's continuous inflammation. There's continuous inflammation under UC. So if it's affecting the rectum, assume this is the rectum, the inflammation will be continuous. And it could also affect the sigmoid, so it could also be continuous. But for CD, if we have this to be the colon, the inflammation will be like this. So it affects the side. So this could be inflammation. We term it as patches. The inflammation here, then we have a space. Then we could have another inflammation here. There'll be an island. So these are like islands. So we have inflammation. And these inflammation, we could term it as escape lesions or patches. So you could have patches here. And you could have patches here. You could have patches here. So these are the inflammation. This is how Crohn's behave. In terms of the inflammation, these are Crohn's behave. And this is how ulcerative colitis behave. The inflammation is continuous. The inflammation is continuous. So for ulcerative colitis, the inflammation is continuous. For Crohn's disease, there's escape lesions or patches. So if we have an inflammation like this. So if it's affecting the colon, this is what you can use to differentiate. If it's affecting the colon, this is what you can use to differentiate. There's escape lesions under Crohn's disease, and there's ulcerative colitis. And ulcerative colitis is continuous. Thus, escape lesions or patches. So this is that. So let's now learn this.
Hello, Dr. Attakorah. Hello.
Talk.
Yes, please. With the difference, the inflammation is this with the ulcerative colitis? Is there a particular point where you should start from, or if it starts from anywhere and it's continuous, it's still ulcerative colitis? Because if maybe starting from the ascending colon and it gets to maybe the transverse, maybe extends through the transverse, that one too is continuous. So can we say that one too is ulcerative colitis? Or
anywhere that it will start, if it's starting here and ending here it will be continuous. It could start from here and end here, it will be continuous. But for Crohn's, what you can use to differentiate is that Crohn's behave as an island. So you have this, assume you have the transverse colon here. Then there will be this within, the inflammation will be within. Then there will be another inflammation. There will be a space, a normal mucosa here, and there will be an inflammation also here. But this will be continuous. So if here it becomes like this, if here becomes like this, then we term it as what? becomes like this. We term it as what? Atechi.
Doctor,
Atechi, we term this as what?
that one would be colitis, ulcerative colitis.
Why?
Because so if it's continuous along the transverse, okay, so this one is not across the transverse, so this one can be the CD, the A. Yes, so it can be the Crohn's disease instead of the ulcerative colitis.
I'm saying this. I don't know. You haven't been into this IT, these specialists. I was with them, GI special, I was with them. And when we were doing these endoscopies and colonoscopy, I was with them. This will be shown. For Crohn's, listen, for Crohn's, we have patches. There's an island, they term it as an island, where we have small patches in between the normal mucosa. And it's not be even one. You could have, if you have, say, the transverse here, you could have this, and it's not this, it's not like this. You could have small this. You could have inflammation like this. That's why they term it as an island. So we have inflammation in between the parts. We have a normal mucosa. But in the case of ulcerative colitis, I wish you will see endoscopy or colonoscopy. You see, it's continuous. You have these patches. And for ulcerative colitis, you won't have these small patches in between. This is for Crohn. There will be patches. But anytime there's an ulcerative colitis, you see that continuous. There won't be any break. So if it's affecting A to B, there's a continuum. But if it were to be this, there will be break. If it were to be this, there will be break in this, breaks in this. It's a small, the same area covering, but there will be breaks here, breaks here. You get it?
Yes, please.
So this, you see this ulcerative colitis like this, continuous. If it's affecting a smaller area, you'll be seeing continuous. If it's affecting a smaller area, you'll be seeing these islands. Well, we have inflammation and we have a normal mucosa. So that is that. So now let's ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis. Let me ask you. So if you have the rectum, it means there will be continuous inflammation. If you have the rectum, so we have inflammation affecting the rectum. So the moment you have inflammation affecting the whole rectum, what will come into your mind is what? It's ulcerative colitis. What is the name when we have only the rectum being affected? When inflammation involves the rectum only, how do you call it?
Proctitis.
What?
Proctitis.
So we have proctitis. Proctitis. When it's affecting the rectum, please. Class, listen. That's a small meeting, a small meeting. It should take about 10 minutes. Profanto gave me, there's a small meeting I have to do. So let you break from it. Let me have that small meeting. I will come back and continue. You get it?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let him have that small meeting. I'll come back in say 10 minutes. Thank you.